He points with his finger, ordering the guards to seize him.
Bruce Myers, grande attore di teatro e cinema. Come è iniziato il suo connubio artistico con Peter Brook, iniziato se non sbaglio intorno al 1970?
It all started with Helen Mirren. I was in love with Helen Mirren very much. And I went to see her in Stratford-on-Avon on my motorbike, just to show off my new Montesa Scorpion motorbike and my leather trousers. And my motorbike broke down in front of the stage door. And I was inspecting the batteries. I was cleaning the batteries because it had got a mixture of oil. It had got oil and it had got dirt into it, so that the spark would not ignite the motor. At the stage door, while I was mending my motorbike, Anthony Page and Peter Brook, who I didn't know, Anthony Page I knew a little bit, came out of the stage door, having seen the same play that I'd seen. And he asked me what I was doing. And I explained that I was cleaning my motorbike. He said, well, what exactly are you doing? I said, I'm cleaning it so that when I put my foot on the piece of metal that would ignite the spark and ignite the mixture of oil and petrol in the motorbike engine, and the motorbike would drive forward. And Peter Brook said to me, does that remind you of anything else? I said, well, not specially. It reminds me of a motorbike, basically, but it could be something else. He said, doesn't it remind you of life? You know, a little bit of energy, and the spark ignites, and all that moves you forward. But you need effort, clearly needed effort first to go forward anywhere, especially on the motorbike. So that's how I met him. Then I saw him a little bit later on. I had a meeting with him later on in the famous pub that was called the Dirty Duck. People always met there. I met him there and we talked for a very long time. And he invited me to come eventually, on the strength of this meeting, to come to Paris. He knew I told him I was finished with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I'd just come to visit Helen, and I was on my way back to the Lake District in the mountains where I was teaching sailing. I was perfectly happy there. So I went to Paris. I did an audition. The audition was finally successful, and they called me from the Lake District, and I came back to Paris. I did another audition, and finally I was accepted. This was in June, and by November 1970 we started in Paris. I was there for 2 weeks, and that was prolonged to 6 weeks, and finally I've been there for 40 years.
A proposito di spettacoli, sono già 2 anni di seguito che è nella stagione teatrale del Teatro Eutheca, con 2 spettacoli per la regia di Peter Brook, con Fragments e la compagnia Le Bouffe du Nord, e ora con il Grande Inquisitore. Cosa pensa di Eutheca e che sensazioni ha avuto del pubblico italiano?
Well, Eutheca, doing Fragments, it was the first performance, I think, one of the first performances. There were some performances in Paris, and then we came here. It was very scary. I hadn't done it. We hadn't done it before. And I was quite nervous. But absolutely clearly, I remember that the audience were so warm and enthusiastic and were interested and laughing, and it was clearly working, that I was immediately more confident. And the play went on and became very successful. But I definitely remember the connection with the audience here, specifically here. I've been to Italy before with the Grande Inquisitore. I've been to Naples and Prato and Catania. That was nice. It was always nice, actually. It was always enthusiastic somehow. And then people started to discuss the play and so on. They knew what it was all about.
Il Grande Inquisitore, per la regia di Peter Brook, ha fatto il giro del mondo ed è in programmazione al Teatro Eutheca nell'ottobre del 2012. Il testo è tratto dai Fratelli Karamazov, adattato da Marie-Hélène Estienne, ed esplora il cardine della filosofia di Dostoevskij, il rapporto fra il bene e il male, il libero arbitrio. Può raccontarci esattamente di cosa parla e quali temi, in particolare l'adattamento di Peter Brook e Marie-Hélène Estienne, ha scelto di portare in primo piano?
The great virtue of the work that Peter and Marie-Hélène had done was that it was very exactly Dostoevsky. It wasn't it wasn't an adaptation in that sense. First of all, before anything, it had been already played before in French. Maurice Bénichou had played it, and he'd played it with a Christ who was called Antonin Stally, who's a marvelous violin player, a great musician, a very beautiful young man, and he was Christ. So that performance had been around for a long time. When it came to me, I remember that he wanted to do something without Christ, to make it very intimate and very personal by having the actor playing being the Grand Inquisitor, and looking directly into the audience at someone over there who would become Christ, and who was Christ. However, we did 3 performances in Warwick. They were the first performances, and our first person I saw was a man, and I was saying to him, "Is it you? You? Don't say anything, don't speak. Anyway, what could you say?" And I saw that he was very angry, and the man was going like this, watching me. And I kind of voided his eyes, started to point to another Christ somewhere else, and then the next night, it was very, very difficult performance. The next night there was a very attractive woman on the 3rd row in the middle who was incredibly embarrassed at me talking to her, at me accusing her, and me of saying, "Well, you have disappointed the people. That you're an elite person, and your religion is an elitist religion, and you've not even accepted Satan's advice in the wilderness." And I could see that she was appalled by this, and that didn't quite work out. And we went to another place in Wales. There were those performances which I can say were not very successful in terms of the relationship between myself and the audience. We then went to Wales, and by then we knew we had to find a Christ. And like everything, things just took a very particular turn. We were standing on the stage, getting ready with the first lighting, looking at the position of the platform, and a very beautiful, sturdy man of about 50 was putting the finishing touches to the stools that we were using for me and Christ. We decided that then we would have to have Christ. And he was marvelous. He was a blonde hippie, a real hippie with blonde hair and earrings, and a moustache and a beard, an incredibly good-looking man. And we said, "That's Christ." And he was delighted, and he sat there and never moved and looked so affectionately at me. And the problem was solved. There was a man who was delighted by being Christ, who must have known everything about what that relationship could be, and it was beautiful. As for so that went on for a very long time, for years and years and years, with different Christs all over the world, in Brazil, in São Paulo, in Belo Horizonte, in Madrid, in Prague, many, many places all over Europe. And I think I shall do that here. I think the play, the text itself, and it really is Dostoevsky's text. It's an astonishingly powerful text, even today, perhaps more so today, because people are not separated. So, I mean, there was the Orthodox Church, which was very strong. The Catholic Inquisition was about 1,500 years ago, not that long ago. And it was, in a way, not as difficult as one might think. It's shocking in that we can see that that Christ's world is inaccessible today. It's very hard to preach Christian love, and that was somehow where the Inquisitor can't accept Christ's teaching. One reason was because he refused to accept Satan's 3 temptations. He says, why don't you make these stones into bread? Why don't you go on the top of the tower and let yourself and jump off the tower, and then there'll be a miracle and everyone will believe you, because miracle, mystery and authority are the 3 forces that will work now in your religion. I find the Inquisitor to be a very complex human being, but nonetheless absolutely human. A man who has had this horrible job, and in some way tries to understand why he's been doing that, and turns away from everything good, everything Christian. He turns to Satan and loves Satan. He's highly emotional. His love for God, for Jesus, has fallen away, and he now replaces it by a sort of strange love and affection for the more mysterious world of Satan. In fact, there was, in 1800, a lot of priests turned away from that, and there was a satanic heresy. The man in the end, finally talking to Christ, sentences him to be burned no later than tomorrow. Let it be. And Christ walks towards him and kisses him on the lips. And the old man shudders. His lips move. He walks to the door, opens it, and says, "Go, and come no more. Never, never." And he lets him out into the dark alleys of the town. The old man shudders. The old man walks down, walks away, and his heart is burning, his lips are dry, but he never changes his idea. And that's the end. It's a long journey, passing through the sense of seeing above all that forgiveness, Christ's pardon of everything he's done by the kiss, changes him, although he says, but he's not changed, but his ideas have not changed. Of course, it's an extraordinary piece of work. Dostoevsky's incredible, just an incredible language, brilliant. And he makes it possible to play. Although in theory it's a very complicated part.
Guardando al nostro passato storico, ogni elite e ogni ordine stabilito ha condiviso e usato una qualche versione della tesi dell'Inquisitore. Lei ritiene che la tematica sia attuale?
Absolutely relevant. No more relevant than ever before. And it's exciting, of course, it's absolutely relevant. That's it.
In un quadrato di palcoscenico nudo, sotto la luce dei riflettori, un attore, un interlocutore. Non ha bisogno di niente di più la parola di Dostoevskij. Il teatro ha un suo posto. Qual è oggi, secondo lei, la forza che può avere il teatro di cambiare qualcosa nel mondo?
I don't think the theatre has force to change the world, but it can change many, many people individually. In Mexico, where the Catholic Church is very, very strong on young people, one of the students came and said, thank you, and that she'd been released from the weight of having to choose between good and evil because she didn't know. She wondered if she was evil, she hoped to be good, and she didn't know whether she could be good, and she might be evil, and she'd been frightened of that. And she said, I'm free of that now, thank you.
Attore dalla grande intensità e concentrazione, abituato dopo anni di lavoro con Brook a proiettare la sua forza scenica con la massima efficacia e la massima ostentazione, Myers ci fa virtualmente vedere in aria i punti in cui tocca ogni aspetto irritante del modo in cui viene concepito e costruito il nostro mondo. Come può un attore arrivare a un tale risultato?
Through working with Peter Brook, for a start, which gives me a certain freedom not to look for success, not money, not fame. I've been very happy with Peter and very satisfied, and that's given me a lot of personal confidence and also a certain kind of knowledge of where one can be peaceful and silent and not panicked by life, not afraid of life.
Da diversi anni lei dirige workshop con studenti e giovani attori. Gli ultimi progetti hanno avuto luogo a Torino, Prato, a Roma, presso l'Accademia Eutheca. Qual è il suo rapporto con la pedagogia?
Teaching is resting for me, is gentle and peaceful, and again, of course, the theatre event itself, the actual playing theatre, is full of tension. But away from that, I can be much closer to myself if I'm teaching. I found that to be very true very often now.
Eutheca attiva da quest'anno un progetto che si occupa di scrittura e realizzazione di progetti per il teatro e per il cinema. Lei che è un attore di teatro nella sua forma più essenziale, ma anche di cinema, quale rapporto ha con queste due arti?
You know, I don't really know films very well. I've done some films. I've enjoyed filming, mainly because there's been very little responsibility. I've not been a film star. Nobody's ever really demanded very much of me in films. So that again is a sort of rest, although it's the same tension, the same playing in front of people or in front of a camera has always created a certain discomfort. So there's not, it's not, I don't know cinema really, basically. That's the answer to that.
Oltre a essere un attore, quindi a vivere sulla scena, è anche autore e regista. E per The Book ha ricevuto diversi premi. È stato un esperimento o un passaggio obbligato?
No, it was kind of one-off. I never wrote anything again. But it's still successful, it's still running. There's a Greek version of it now, very successful. And now someone wants it to translate it back into Yiddish, which it once was. My version of it. My version is a simple version, 2 people instead of 26. And it lasts 50 minutes. So it was a good play, but I've never written anything else, so it's not really part of my life, writing either. Not movies, not writing, just acting.
Infine, una parola per invogliare il pubblico che ci segue a venire a vedere, ricordiamolo, ad ottobre al Teatro Eutheca, il Grande Inquisitore.
Oh yes, they must come. They must come. They'll come, they must come. It's very, very interesting. It's an extremely real situation, in spite of people saying, oh, we don't care anymore. The British are the worst because they genuinely don't care about religion essentially. But everywhere else in Europe, especially in Catholic countries, Christian countries, it's a very strong issue to be plagued by laws and ancient Hebraic laws, ancient laws of the Bible. People don't know what to do. And this is a good way of seeing something very real happen. Thank you.